do it.
All right. Tips to giving a dog with bite history a fair life.
Structure. Everything comes with structure. I think the biggest mistake people make with dogs that have bite history is they right away want to get the dog out in an environment, and then they want people giving the dog treats. Right? There's no bigger mistake than a dog that has an issue with people and then people getting in that dog's face. Right? So as a trainer, my thing is to decompress the dog. Like everybody around you doesn't even pay attention to you.
I love that.
They don't put any pressure on you. And the only person who's going to give you cookies is me.
Right.
And then after weeks of this, I have people dropping treats. So there's no pressure. I think dogs with bite history don't do well with pressure they can't understand, right? The pressure of me not allowing them to interact and pressure of me telling somebody else don't go near the dog makes it fair to the dog. Right. Then I can explain to the dog, you have no reason to bite. But if somebody's getting right in his face, I can't correct the dog because I haven't set up a fair structure for the dog.
Go and get it with no hesitation. This that never quit. Start that elevation. This that process. This that in the making. This that started from the.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Elevated Canine Podcast. I am here with my co-host Roel Guerra, and today I am blessed to have my brother Robert Cabral here. What's up, Robert?
Thanks,
How you
man.
doing?
Well, thanks for having me on.
Hey, man. Finally we're able to get him.
Well, no, you've been talking about it for a long time.
I know. First off, man, let's get started with your story. I know you and I have talked a little bit, and I didn't know a lot of things that you were mentioning. I was like, yo, let's save it for the podcast. So why don't we start with, when you got down here and your journey.
Where do you want to start?
I want from the beginning, from when you got to LA, or even when you were born. Yeah, your upbringing. Man. I think a lot of people always wonder about like people's upbringing. Yeah. I for sure did, because we could get there at some point, but we were talking about how you did struggle for a certain period of time while you were down here. And to me, it was kind of like, I automatically seeing you, I assumed that you have always been somebody who was, successful or, you grew up in a certain way.
Right.
And it wasn't like that. So definitely that's why I want to hear your story from the beginning.
Well, I mean, I was born in America and I was raised in Germany for the first 8 years of my life. So I came back to America not speaking the language.
Wow.
So I got beat up every single day going to school, like 8, 9 years old.
Got it.
And lived in Jersey and got beat up, because I was a German guy, couldn't speak the language, didn't know the jokes, didn't know the lingo and everything. So it was horrible. I hated my life. I hated every day of my existence. I went to a Catholic school and just got beat up going to and from school. On good days, I just got beat up going one way. And my mom put me in martial arts. First thing, I was like 9 or 10 years old, and I was in a judo class and karate classes and stuff. And then we moved to Florida from New Jersey after my uncle died. Because when I lived in Germany, it was my mom, me, my cousin, my aunt, and my grandmother, 5 of us living in a 1-bedroom apartment. So, and then when we moved to New Jersey, we had to step up, and it was my aunt and my uncle and my mom and I living in a 2-bedroom apartment, or 2-bedroom house. So my mom eventually met somebody else. My parents got divorced when I was like 2 or 3, and we moved to Florida, and that was a huge move. First time I had my own room. I was 13 years old, and it was, I think life is a struggle. I think to me, it's just normal.
Right.
I moved out to California. I did martial arts and stuff. I came out to California to be a bodyguard. That was my first real job in California, was bodyguarding and doing security and teaching martial arts back and forth. So
how old were you when you came down here?
I was 20 years old when I came here. And and the company that I was working for, bodyguarding at the time, had an apartment set up for me where I could live. And within about, I would say 2 months, I was homeless.
Oh, dang. Wow.
Yeah, I had nowhere to go. Like there was a lock, one of those locks they put on your door and you can't get in. Like you can get out, but you can't get in. That was on my door. And I'm like, oh man, I got my stuff. And I didn't have a lot of stuff. When I moved out here, I was in a 1972 Mazda RX-7 with all my possessions. So, but like those all I had, right? And they were locked in this Oakwood apartment in Toluca Lake. And so, I got lucky. This girl I'd been dating, we kind of moved in together, and I stayed with her and her friend, and for a while. And then just circumstances happened. Bodyguarding got really busy, and I enjoyed being a bodyguard, although it led me to become the person where I just have this disdain for fame or Hollywood or or wealth or I should say opulence, not wealth, right? Like people who show off with their money. And man, it's just such a long story to just kind of like narrate on.
Right.
But eventually, I opened a karate school.
How old were you when you opened that up?
27.
27.
Yeah. So I was. I was teaching at that point. I was lucky that I had the rank to be able to teach at that age. And I started the first school I opened was in Switzerland. Came back to the States. I was going back and forth to Switzerland. Came back to the States, and then I opened a school in Little Tokyo. I was the only Caucasian guy to ever have a school in Little Tokyo, Los Angeles. And which wasn't fun because the Asians, the Japanese were not fans of me at that time. A little reverse racism going on. But I got through it because the guy who actually, and that's how funny how people talk about racism. Like the guy who gave me the shot to have the dojo in Little Tokyo was a Japanese guy. And then the Japanese martial artists weren't happy that I was there, but I stayed there nonetheless. Some intimidation stuff, but that didn't work out very well. So then I went to the Sports Club Irvine and the Sports Club LA and started their martial arts program.
Is that kind of like a gym or?
Yeah, Sports Club LA was like the premier fitness, where all the wealthy Beverly Hills and stuff was. So that was I taught there for a year or so, and then the owners of the club offered me the space behind the club to open a traditional dojo. And I opened that, and I had that for 11 years, till 2000.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, so that was my, but then again, during that time, I was dating the girl I now marry, Janet, and we broke up, and my life just took a really bad turn. And I ended up living on the floor of that school. Nobody knew. I would literally hide my car around the corner.
And you were like if you were 27 at this point, how old are you?
30, maybe 32.
You're living at the...
Yeah, I had nothing. I had no money. I had nothing. I was at the bottom, like at the very bottom again. Right. It's like from my childhood all the way up. But I thought it was fine. I lived on the floor of the school. I would go to Yoshinoya and get like a big chicken thing for dinner. Yeah. And for breakfast, I'd get egg whites at the Sports Club LA because I got a discount because I was teaching the program. But they didn't know I was living in the dojo. I would have lost that. And then I would have been living in my car.
Wow.
So, and then from there, I just started, trucking back and trying to make it. And that's it.
Just running that class or whatever there until you became a dog trainer.
I did photography, and then I hated that. And it's like all my hobbies turned into jobs,
right?
Which you then end up hating. Right, dog training is the only thing that was a hobby that I helped my friends train their dogs. I learned a little bit, studied a little bit, and it's one thing I've done besides martial arts that I still love for the longest time in my life, and I still love it.
Got it. So let's get into the dog training side of it. How was it? So your introduction to dog training. What was your first dog that you put hands on? Or
wow. Well, first dog I put. We had dogs growing up, but we never trained them. They were never trained. We had there was a collie when I was a young boy named Lassie. Of course. And then we had a Lhasa Apso called Gatsby, and then he got put down. And then I didn't have a dog for a long time. And then my buddy, Mike, who was a magician, was like a hobby trainer. So he would do like little, 4-H kind of stuff. But he had Dobermans. And so I would always help him with his Dobermans because he was taking karate classes from me. So he was kind of showing me the basics and stuff like that.
Got it.
And then I got a Shar-Pei, and that was like 2003 maybe or something like that. So it was the first time I really trained a dog, and he was perfect. Like this dog couldn't do like fancy protection or obedience stuff, but the dog was bulletproof.
He was trained.
He was perfectly trained. I'd tell him to lay down, dogs would jump on nothing, and he had never had an aggression. And I got him because he was aggressive from somebody.
Really?
It was a year old, but it wasn't really aggression. So
got it.
Yeah. So that was my first dog, Silly.
Got it. And then after you get that, you start training your friends' dogs, I'm guessing.
Right. Yeah.
And then let's get into your work with the rescue dogs. I'm very intrigued by that. I know you worked a lot with rescue dogs.
Yeah.
And so I definitely want to hear about that.
Well, that started because I was still doing photography, and I thought that the dogs in shelters they were screwed. Like I was living in Nashville, Tennessee back then, and I went into the shelter. I felt I was blessed in my life, so I would buy big bags of food, and I would just drop them off at the shelter in Nashville. And then one day I said, wonder what it's like back there, like in the back. And I said, can I look in the back? And they were really cool. And they said, yeah, go look. And I would literally like start crying. Like I opened the door, and Nashville Metro is a nice shelter. It's not like LA, what you see here, right? I mean, it's like clean. And so I went in the back and I said, oh, this sucks, man. This is horrible.
Right.
And I went home and I looked at my dog and I'm like, my dog is loved every day. And these dogs are abandoned for like, mainly for no reason.
Right.
So I said, I got to change it. Right. And so I started, when I moved back to LA, I went into, I sent an email to the guy who's the head of the LA city shelters, Ed Boakes. And I said, you guys got to change the way you're doing things. And I was surprised. He called me to his office and said, what can we do better? I had a pen and paper. And I was like, wow, like, how did I get so lucky that this guy would listen to me?
Right.
And I said, well, you've got to show the dogs better in videos and pictures and stuff like that. And all I would do back then is I had my Shar-Pei and, he was trained and stuff, but I didn't want to be a trainer. I was going into the shelters and I said, well, let's take these dogs out and let me see if I can handle them. Let me see if they'll sit for a treat. Let me see if, hey, let's put some other dogs with them. Let's see what's going to happen. If they messed up, I correct them. I say, hey, don't do that. Don't do this. And at that point, there was a lot of Shar-Peis and Pit Bulls that I was working with and pulling. And my vet, Dr. Lisa, said, I would bring the dog in for a health check because the dog was going to get adopted. And she said, well, who trained this dog? And I said, nobody. And I bring in another one. She goes, well, who trained this dog? And I said, nobody. And she says, well, you keep telling me nobody, but these dogs are like Shar-Peis and they're not biting and they're really well behaved and they're this and that. And I said, well, I just kind of like tell them to sit or like, tell them to knock it off if they're being aggressive. She goes, well, you should be a dog trainer. And I said, no, I'm not going to mess up another hobby,
Right.
And then people started calling me like, oh, Dr. Lisa said you can help me with my dog. And I was like, oh man, I don't really want to do it.
Right. What year was this?
That would have to be, because I still had my Shar-Pei, so it would have to be around 2007.
Got it.
And then I said, then I started the nonprofit Bound Angels, which really went well. And then I ended up putting that program into the LA city shelters. Like I would go in there and I would work with dogs and stuff like that. And then the guy, my friend Louis, who was a big mentor to me, Louis Dado, who passed away, he and I just hit it off. Like we just had the same sense of humor, it's like kind of a cop mentality kind of guy, real down to earth kind of guy. And we would laugh about stuff and just shoot the breeze. And they asked me, LA City said, would you put in a request for proposal to do our play groups? And I said, well, sure. Like, I don't know what they said an RFP. I said, what's an RFP? They said it's a request for proposal. I had no idea what that was.
Right.
I had no idea how to even write one. Because it's never been good at that business side of it. So I figured it out. I kind of copied what other people had done and I wrote it and I got accepted. So for 3+ years, I started the very first play groups in the LA city shelters, which comes to find out that's the hardest shelters in the country for some reason.
I bet.
Because of the demographic, the type of dogs, the situations, the shelters before they had really crappy shelters like the South Shelter, the Chesterfield Square Shelter, the North Shelter. They were all like just really tough places. And they had really tough dogs.
Right.
And getting those dogs to get together was a challenge. But it would help them. It would help save their lives, but not as much as behavior modification, right? I mean, the play group thing is a really good sell, and there's a lot of people who really like that, and it looks good. It looks good on tape. But you, as the average adopter, don't care that I can get 17 pit bulls in the yard because you're not going to do it.
Right.
Right. And they're running and they're jumping and they're smashing into each other. That's just the way the Molishers play, right? They run, they smash into each other. And we started figuring out early on that we would be kind of breed specific, although not in a negative way, but we would put all the Molishers, the pit bulls, the all these dogs in one group, and they would all play because they knew how to play and we knew how to correct them.
Got it.
And we really ruled them with an iron fist.
So if you had a dog say that is dog aggressive, you wouldn't even put him in there at all?
No, why would you? Yeah. I mean, what I would do with that dog is I would take that dog separately and work him if there was hope. But the problem in rescue, it is and always will be, the feel-good mentality.
Right.
Right. So people go, oh, that dog, if only you would take him, you can handle him. Yeah, but I don't want him.
Right.
Right. I want a nice dog. In a shelter, you have a percentage. Most dogs in the shelter are either nice or relatively moldable. But rescue and feel-good people spend their time on the dogs that have killed another dog, that have bit a kid in the face, that are super aggressive, because it's the feel-good story.
Right.
Like the dog that's found with 3 legs and 1 eye can get adopted a lot faster than a really healthy 3-year-old shepherd mix.
Yep.
And that's stupid.
And even the media, I mean, all these organizations play on that. They'll put, they'll put the sad song and all that with that looking.
Well, they're making hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right.
Right. I was running my organization, basically funding it myself. And at some point when I got funded, I was working 40 plus hours a week, and I never took a salary of more than $2,000.
Wow.
So the feel good problem is the problem in all of dog training. You know that.
Yeah.
Dogs don't play with emotions like we do. But by doing what I did, and I caught a lot of guff from people that wanted to do it differently. But we saved thousands of dogs.
Right.
There's no arguing with success.
Yeah, and I think you and the dogs you did have, I'm sure you set up the new owners for success, because I mean, like those feel good stories, it's almost like they come with a lot of issues, these dogs, and they just throw them out there into regular pet owners that have no clue what is going on.
Yeah.
I know that we had a client recently. I called you about this dog that was dog aggressive, and she got it from a rescue, and come to find out they have had a lot of situations like this where they placed dogs that were like real pit bulls bred for fighting that they rescued. Yeah. And this dog was like crazy dog aggressive. I mean, he saw a dog and he was like screaming like how Wapo does for bite work. That's how he was screaming for these dogs. He wanted to go after them, and we just tried everything. And
can't fix it.
And this our client, it's just her with her 2 kids. And I was like, there's no way we're going to throw this dog back in there and we're going to set her up. The dog was redirecting back on her. I was like, we're just going to set her up, and we're going to set the dog up for failure.
And everybody else.
And so it's interesting. And I felt really bad, about letting her know, like, hey, you know what? I don't think we could help you with this dog. Yeah. And so I could only imagine, but I think the way you're doing it is like and that's one thing that I respect about you is, and I told you, I wish I could be more like you, and I'm trying to be more like you in a sense that you don't care, and you're going to let them know exactly how it is. Yeah. And sometimes I feel like, I don't want to offend people, or you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so, but I think that especially people that are rescuing need to hear the hard truth of how it really is.
Yeah, I mean, you if you went into the shelter, and I used to teach this when I taught at the shelter, I said, find the dog, get not the low-hanging fruit, because a lot of, and I'm not criticizing all rescues, but there is a certain demographic of rescues, and I'm not saying culturally, but certain people, they're going to go in and they're going to pick out the low-hanging fruit, right? So when you go to the shelter, you go, okay, that's a purebred golden, that's a purebred lab, that's a purebred German shepherd, and they take those out. Now, German shepherds and stuff like that, okay, I get it. They go to a German shepherd rescue, it's great. But when you pick out the little Maltese, this one, that one, this one, and then when you go to the shelter, all you see is pit bulls, old dogs, chihuahuas, and aggressive dogs, right? Now the shelter's kind of screwed. Because what you need to do, they had a program, the New Hope program in LA, where they wouldn't allow a dog to be adopted to a rescue, right? Because they're not rescuing the dog, right? Rescuing is pulling the dog off the street. Right. Taking it out of the shelter, some of those dogs, their greatest risk is adoption, right? So they're taking these dogs out, and then they're, getting it for free from the shelter or for a very low fee, and then they're adopting it or selling it for $500. Mm-hmm. Right. Now, some rescues do really good stuff. Like they put a lot of medical into the dog. They put like the guy I had on Kyle on my show, he would put a lot of money into the dog. And there's a lot of great rescues who do that. So I'm not talking about that. Right. And people got to be a little less sensitive about this kind of stuff. But the people, and they are those. Okay, they get them all, and then okay, like it's $500 to adopt dog, and they're gonna do like 3 home checks and like a financial, I mean, that's ridiculous.
And they get donations and everything on top of that,
and tax-free status and stuff like that. So that's BS, right? Wow. But you've got to be honest with people that there's certain dogs that need to be killed, right? Those dogs are not safe.
And it sounds horrible to say it like that, and
but that's the truth.
And it does not feel good when you have to put a dog down.
No.
But that's the truth.
It's not my fault. Right, I didn't breed the dog. Yeah. I didn't screw up raising the dog. I didn't screw up, putting the dog in these situations. But the people who did that, there's a special place in hell for them, right? I'm doing the best I can, but I know my limits.
Right.
And I, more than that, know another person's limits. So I'm not going to put that dog in the hands of a mother with 2 kids that's redirecting, and the kid's going to get his face torn off.
1,000%.
Right? And I always say, if I tell you that dog needs to be put down, I'll take it to the vet and do it.
Right.
Right. I will go with you.
Yep.
If I trained your dog and I can't do anything with it, because then you're going to have the other trainers going to say, well, he didn't try this, or he used too much compulsion, or he didn't use enough compulsion. Or, it doesn't matter. I know what I know after the experience I have. You know what you know. I'm confident in saying that if I can't fix the dog, probably nobody else is going to be able to fix it.
Yeah. And trainers are going to go out of their way to say that they can fix the dog. Mm-hmm. And the person's just going to waste more money to, at the end up doing probably the same thing again.
And heartache.
But even if, let's say somebody can fix the dog.
Wait. You're talking about fixing...
not fixing it.
Okay.
Let's say I say, I can do it, and I can do it, but only I can do it. Does that make sense?
Like the dog, that's how the dog acts with
me.
You. Right.
But as soon as I turn it over, that person's doesn't have the knowledge that I have to continue.
That's not fixed.
It's not fixed, right? It's I can manage it into a point, that he can live with me. Mm-hmm. But that person that's going to get the dog back is not going to live the same way I did. Not going to have the same structure.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you're going to have to set that dog up. I had a friend who had a Corso, and I knew the lines and I knew where he came from. And I could tell from a young age, like this dog didn't even need bite work training. He automatically was going forward, and he actually bit with bad intention. And I was like, and then he would tell me like, hey man, like every time like he feels a certain way, he like without even knowing, he'll lunge. Yeah. Like if you came from behind and you touched him, like his first reaction is to lunge, right?
Back, yeah.
And I'm like, I don't care how much desensitizing we do with this dog. Anyways, he ended up having the dog. He was like 3.5. And one morning, the dog was sleeping next to the bed. And I think it was the wife or somebody reached over to pet him, and whoop, the dog just went off, right? He went crazy and bit. And I was like, there's no way you could remove that piece of that dog unless you, and like I told him, unless you're going to have him in a dog run and you're going to be the one to feed him and take him out on walks and put him back in the dog run and not give this nobody the opportunity to get close to this dog.
Right.
If that's the way you want to live with this dog, cool. Yeah. Have at it. But I don't know how you're going to do, like everybody has this idea of their dog. They could take them anywhere. Yeah. They could social, the dog's going to be super social. Some dogs are not that, People make that mistake all the time though. Like trainers, and there's so many good trainers. Like I have so many, like yourself, I have an immense amount of respect for you. I think you're amazing. Thank you.
And there's a lot of really good trainers in the world, but there's that small group, right, who are just stupid and jerks. So like they'll say, well, I'll fix the dog. First of all, you don't fix aggression ever. If it's true aggression, it's managed. Right? We manage a dog. It's not a car. You don't replace the spark plug and fix it, right? This is a behavior. This is a feeling, sentient creature who has a reason for those things he's acting out on. So if you say you're going to fix this dog, you're lying.
Right.
It's not. You can maybe fix a dog's jump, or fix a bite like you do with your competition dogs, but you don't fix a dog that's aggressive. And so now you're going to manage it. Now, who are you going to give that dog to manage it?
Exactly.
And here's a great story. I used to do dangerous dog cases, right, as an expert witness. And the last case I ever took, and it's going to make me probably cry. This guy, I believe it was a woman. She had this dog, and it got killed by this other big dog. And I was defending the dog that killed the dog. And she sat in front of me, and she said, that dog belonged to my husband, and since he died, that was the only memory I had of my husband. And this dog killed my last memory.
Wow.
And I defended that dog because I had to. And
you defended the
killing dog.
Wow.
That dog got off. And I said, I vowed that day, I will never defend a dog again that doesn't deserve to be defended.
Oof.
And it was a life-changing moment for me. I was like, I allowed this dog. That dog should have been killed.
It went against your
my core, you know, and this guy had a story, and I said, okay, I'll take the case. And like you're a defense attorney, you can't just suddenly go, oh yeah, he actually did it. You know, you can't do that. You know, it's my obligation. But on that day I swore, and I've had so many people come to me and they said, oh, you can defend this dog. And I said, yeah, but I won't, because if the dog killed another dog, you shouldn't have that dog. That dog should be killed. Right. You know, I mean, you got to control your dogs. I mean, we all have dogs that are very powerful, but we make a commitment to train them and to make them social, and if not, to control them. Right. And if you can't do that, why should a person, and my father was murdered, you know, I don't believe that if you murdered somebody, you don't get another shot. That's my core belief. You know, you killed somebody on accident, you turned a corner of the person. Okay, I get it. That's homicide or manslaughter. I mean, but no, murder, sorry, they don't get it.
Yeah, the other person doesn't get to.
Their family will never see that person again. Right. So so it's a tough one.
That's tough. Yeah, I don't know. So so going back to this case, it was kind of like, hey, this is the situation. This is how it happened, and you were kind of like, oh, it was an accident, and the dog went over there and killed him. And I
temperament tested the dog. You know, I mean, I've temperament tested hundreds of dogs over my career, and here's the thing with temperament testing. You know this, you can skew it. Right. I mean, a dog generally is not going to be aggressive to me. Right. Right. I bring a lot of energy to the space, a lot of power. If a dog is going to go off on me, that's a problem. Right. But I can play it, or I can get a dog to kind of play up on me, or I can put so much, stink eye on that dog will never come off on me.
Yeah. No, and it depends on how they're going forward, right? If they're going forward, like, get away from me. But like dogs that really like will nail you, like are serious. Yeah. Like I had a Doberman. I think I've talked about it before in the podcast. I had a muzzle on him, and he just like muzzle punched me so hard right on the chest, and I was like, holy crap! I was like, this dog is a problem, and they have to have him on a muzzle the whole time, and the guy understands it. He's like, yo, I know what I have. Yeah. And I'm just like, I will never own a dog like that for me. So yeah, that's tough, man. And going back to that story of this lady, like, it sucks that she had to go through that because of this owner that couldn't control their dog, man. That's
one of my greatest pains in my life is that I defended that dog.
Wow. Oof. So man, this is good. Thanks for, I didn't know all that of how you're dealing with all the rescue dogs and everything. So this program that you put together for rescue dogs, right? You went deep into how can people pick the right rescue dog, or what is the gist of that one?
Well, the program I put together, the Bound Angels University, was designed for shelter management, staff, volunteers, and trainers to learn how to read dog body language, how to work with dogs, and how to make them ready for adoption. Right. So basically, like, one program we did was called the Canine Good Citizen. The AKC Canine Good Citizen is a fantastic temperament evaluation. I mean, the BH is better, but it's way too intense for the average person. But a Canine Good Citizen, anybody can put it on a dog. And I would teach people, first of all, you got to get a dog out. You got to read that body language. You got to know what you're looking for. People always say, oh, the dog is like lunging and his hackles are standing up. Well, that doesn't mean the dog is aggressive. Right. If you can't look at the whole dog, you don't get the whole picture. So, and I really got that from my martial arts background, because you could have somebody talking all kind of stuff in your face, and this guy's going down really easy. Right. And you can have a guy who's really quiet, and you go, I'm never going to mess with that guy. Right. So I brought a lot of my martial arts into the dog training, and that was really my core of my training, because all dog training is understanding movement and reading body language, right? And working those two together. How can I get you to? I taught kids karate. Really easy. I show you what to do. I lure it. I show it. I do the dog. But the program in the shelter was about taking dogs out of a kennel that you know nothing about, right? And putting a leash on and hoping they don't come up the leash and bite you, and hoping you can work with them. And then you're limited because animal rights people, not animal welfare people, but animal rights people would crucify you for putting a correction on a dog. Right. But they can't do anything. Right, those same people who criticized me for putting corrections on the dogs were the ones calling me to work with the dogs they were trying to save. Right. So, this program was very successful in that we had, I think I had more than 200 people go through the program and that's before the play groups, after the play group, sorry. And it saved a lot of dogs. And then I put it online. I was filming a lot of the stuff for 6 years. I put a program online that does the same thing. So if people want to learn that, and you could learn
That's amazing.
it. Yeah.
Going back on shelter dogs, it's kind of, I think about the dog, right? And how and actually I think about this with even board and trains, going from a regular house setting now into what I feel is something that's not good in the culture of dog training, especially like board and trains, where we just, people could just put them in the crate and then they bring them out, do a training session, put them back up, and the dogs are like stressed out of their mind. It's like a complete, shock to the dog. And I feel that we as trainers, you can't really see what the dog really is because of how much you change the environment. So, and in the first week, like the dog, they start if you run it like that, I'm so happy that we changed the way we were doing things, because I've been there, I've ran, so I know how it could not be good for the dog to have him in a dog run all day. And so shelter dogs, they're like in a dog run all day. You don't see the best side of that dog when you're first going to evaluate this dog.
Right.
And so it's good that you went in there and you can kind of get them out and see something different in the dog. But I just feel so bad for the dogs because, we see them at their worst. Yeah. And so for people that are out there training dogs right now, I encourage you guys to try to mimic as much as you can how this dog's lifestyle is going to be at home, and it's hard, but if you overload yourselves with too many dogs, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but don't keep them in dog runs all day is what I'm saying, because I feel for those dogs, and same thing for the board and trains that come in and with these trainers that just keep them locked up all day. Yeah. Like get them out, start training them. And so was that something that you saw something different in the dogs when you start bringing them out and hanging out and all that? Well, do you see a big change in the dog? Yeah,
you obviously like one big thing you'll see in a shelter is barrier aggression. It's one of the number one things keeping dogs from getting adopted. So that means the dog runs up to the front of that kennel and they're just like, whoa, 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 whoa. And I remember my buddy Lewis, who was a Malinois Shepherd mix in the West LA shelter. And Lewis and I were buddies. We would always rib each other and stuff. So he said, that dog's really aggressive. And I said, I bet you I can get him out. And he said, how much you want to bet? I said, I'll bet you dinner. And he said, no, man, that dog, I come to the door. And Lewis was really good friends with Dave Reaver. So he was a very skilled dog man. Probably, in my opinion, one of the best dog guys I ever met. Could read a dog with in a minute. And I said, I'll take the shot, And so the dog was just coming at the door. And I just opened it and I noosed him and I had him out in the yard really quick. And the dog was amazing, right? It was just the barrier aggression. The mistake people make is they end it there, right? So they go up and they go away, they go up and they go away. So it just builds it more and more. And volunteers are really trying to do their best, but they're not trained. Like, you want to be a volunteer at the shelter, you're going to get trained for 6 hours by somebody who has barely dog knowledge, and you can't criticize them for that. It's not the culture we have. Right. It's like, imagine going to a hospital and somebody has 6 hours of training in trauma. It's not enough. And so they don't know what to do with the dogs, and they'll take the dog out in a yard and they'll throw a ball, or they'll walk him around the street and the dog is dragging him around the street. So the dog got nothing out of that. So my goal was I would take these dogs out in the yard, I'd put them on a long line or on a slip lead, and I would start giving them cookies, like getting them to engage. Some engagement. Engagement. That's all. I called it engagement training, and it's not a term I came up with. It's a term that I became well known for using a lot. But the more I could get that dog to engage to me, to look to me, to offer behaviors to me, the more likely that dog's going to get adopted, because it's going to show that same behavior. I would take that same treat pouch and I'd hand it to the person who wants to adopt the dog. I say, I don't know, go play with him. And the dog would be sitting in front of him, lying down and spinning around or doing whatever, because the dog was rewarded for that. Right? Dogs don't need physical exercise in a shelter environment as much as they need emotional and mental stimulation. That's the mistake people make. They think they need to run them, they need to do this. But dogs are pent up in a kennel. You take them outside and you run them, you get a good risk of tearing a muscle or other injuries. So I would say take them out, let them do their business, and just spend 10 minutes engaging them. And people would watch from, at the West LA shelter, they would be walking by, they'd stop, and they'd see these people out there when we did our Bound Angel University. They would be standing there watching. They're like, wow, what's going on there? What are they doing? And people would want to adopt those dogs.
That's awesome. Man, I think, I'm feeling motivated to go hang out at the shelter now. Same here. And now I'm like, man, I think, man, that's awesome. I like it. It
was fun.
Yeah. And so, so from there, obviously your online stuff, kind of took off. Mm-hmm. And then, so let's go with that. How's all that, going right now?
It's great.
What are some of the biggest issues or questions that you're getting from people that, issues that they're having with their dogs?
Wow. I think it's always the same thing, the leash walking,
It's the first thing that popped into my head.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I think people, I'll tell you what, I think people have way too high of expectations of a dog, right? It's a dog, and you expect to put nothing in and get everything out. So I always use the piggy bank analogy, right? So when I first get a dog, all I do is I give him food. I give him, I give him, give. So that one moment when I need to pop that leash, that's a big withdrawal, right? So if I've made enough deposits, I've engaged the dog enough, I've given the dog enough chance to succeed, to learn, to do what I wanted to do, then I can start making withdrawals. But people right away get a dog on a leash and are yanking the dog and popping the dog and doing this. Now, even in the shelter, when I would take a dog out of a kennel, the first thing I would do is I would put a treat in through the bars. So the dog was like, hey, see this? This is an offering a piece.
Right.
Like, this is how we're going to start the relationship out. And as soon as I get him out, I give him a pet, give him another cookie, and then I get him in the yard, and I give him another cookie. So now, after those 3 or 4 deposits, I kind of expect the dog to pay attention to me. And now I can do long line work, right? Mm-hmm. I can start walking away, and I'm correcting the dog at 10, 12 feet. And the dog is never associating the correction with me because it's 12 feet away. But when he gets to me, he's getting cookies, getting praise, getting affection, getting whatever. And he'd walk away and another correction would come. So, those skills, and again, I didn't want to do an online core membership section like I did. It kind of grew organically because everybody said, I would get these calls and people say, well, how I can't train my dog, but I'm far away and this. And I was like, well, let me do like 10 quick videos on how I would train a dog. And I did it with Goofy. And I just put them on YouTube for free, and I was like, well, nobody's going to want to watch those. And they did. And then people said, well, you can do more. But then I thought, how many different ways can I teach a dog to sit or down or whatever? But people wanted to see more. So then I started the membership section. And I thought, I get more good comments from people that have watched either my membership stuff or my free YouTube stuff than people who have worked directly with me, because people who work directly with you, they get spoiled, right? They see you do it, and then they go, well, we'll do it again, right? Well, it doesn't matter that I can get your dog to do this. And that's, I think, dog trainers make a huge mistake, that they show what they can do with the dog. But that doesn't make any sense. He's not my dog.
Right.
I don't want, how many times you see a dog trainer correct a dog for going back to the owner? Like they're trying to engage the dog, and then
they'll correct the dog.
Yeah, the dog goes back to the owner, and then they go, I know. And I'm thinking, how dumb can you possibly be? Like if a dog goes away from me and back to the owner,
that's good.
It's working. Like that's what I want.
Right.
So barring dogs have resource issues and stuff like that with a person, but yeah, I think online training it's important. I know you talked about this, and other people talk about it online, how it's not a replacement for in-person training, but it doesn't need to be. Right.
I've had people come that take your course or other courses, and I'm just like, your dog's trained. Like, you're good. And there's like, oh, yeah, I just want to see if I could add something. I was like, all right, cool. Let's hang out. Let's play with the dog or whatever.
Right.
But, and it's amazing what can be accomplished.
Yeah.
One of our clients had a Rogan's litter mate, Malinois, super aggressive dog. I mean, he was a nice dog, but definitely had some aggression in there. And dude, he was doing all kinds of stuff with his dog, and I'm just like, where'd you learn, bro? Like, teach me. Yeah. And he's like, he was good. He's like, I was watching Robert, and and then I heard about you, so I came out. I'm just like, man, like that's the type of person I want to work with. People that are motivated like that. But anyways, there was another thing I wanted to talk about real quick too. regarding the shelter dogs and all that stuff, you know, do you feel like, you know, stress on dogs is beneficial to the dog? Like teaching them how to deal with stress.
Yeah.
And you know, and how do you talk to people that are against that? You know, like people, I get hit up all the time. Like, why are you putting the dog through that when you could basically avoid it? You know, what do you tell people like when they come to you with that type of stuff?
Well, the world can't exist without stress, right? It was stress that created the universe. It was an explosion that created the universe. So if you put a dog in stress, which by the way, by taking all stress away, you create an immense amount of stress, because there is stress in the world, right? Somebody's going to cut you off on the road, and people who don't deal with stress well, those are the ones who are like, you know, going postal and shooting people in road rage. Putting a dog in a stressful situation and teaching a dog how to deal with it is no different than taking a kid into a karate class and punching him with a glove and teaching him to block. Right? If you don't teach your dog or child how to deal with stress, you're committing the greatest form of mental abuse, because you need to know how to deal with it. You need to know that stress exists in the world. In a real world, there's stress every single day.
Yeah.
And if you can't handle that stress, you got bigger problems than what I can help you with.
Yeah, no, and then from that, I do want to touch on this. I was listening to Susan Garrett was doing a podcast with Ivan, and she mentioned there, like, you know, the way kind of like the way she grew up was kind of like there was never any punish, like, you know, she wasn't getting her butt whooped or nothing like that. And do you feel like our upbringing molds the way that we train dogs? Do you think that has anything to do with the way that you train dogs?
Yeah, I do. I do really believe that. It's a really great question, by the way. I think people who don't have life experiences don't really know how to share life experiences. Like, you grew up in a tough neighborhood. You had a tough life. I grew up, you know, I've been in very tough situations in my life. But it kind of made me who I am. Like, if I would have been raised on in a really rich area town and never seen poverty and never seen crime and anything like that, then I would think it's this utopian world.
Right.
You know, and I would rather, like, if I had a child, I would want to put my kid in public school and have him have normal friends, like, not, and I've got nothing against wealthy people, and a lot of friends of mine are very, very wealthy, but I don't think it's reality if it's not balanced, right? If you come from the bottom, you go to the top, it's a lot easier than starting at the top and going to the bottom.
Yeah.
But it's a lot easier to go from the top to the bottom than the other way around, right? It's easy just to lose your footing when you're, you know, on top of the ladder. And I think a lot of people do that, and then they don't know how to deal with that stress. But I mean, yeah, I've been almost homeless plenty of times. I remember walking through the Ralph's grocery store and loading stuff in my basket and eating food out of the basket. And then when nobody's looking, I'd leave. That was my meal. You know what I mean? So I understand how to deal with stress. And I think it's made me a better person. And I'm grateful to the way I was raised. I never wish, oh man, I wish I would have been raised in Beverly Hills and, you know, had a really nice fancy car as my first. Man, I'm thankful, so thankful that I wasn't abused like that mentally.
Right. Yeah. No, I thought it was interesting. I'm like, maybe the way that I was brought up did shape the way that, you know, I train dogs.
But what do you? But you're not saying that it makes you more abusive.
No,
on the dog.
but I feel that, like, for me, I feel like it's beneficial for a dog to go through a stressful situation and come out on top.
Right.
And just think about it in protection sports. A dog that has been babied his whole life, right? And they get him to the high levels, and then they face this guy that accidentally steps on his paw, and now real emotions come into play. Yep. And this dog's like, I want nothing to do with this person. You broke the rules of engagement. I want nothing to do with you. Yeah. And now you're like, you're done. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to put him through stressful situations in a way where I'm hurting my dog, but I want him to feel stressed, overcome the stress, and now he became a better dog because he went through that. And I feel it's the same with humans, that if I've learned now that owning your own business is not easy, and when things get hard, I go through stress, right? And I would go into a place where maybe I don't eat as much. I'm thinking the whole day of the worst thing that can happen, right? And I don't function the same way. So I go, I need to get better at this, or I'm not going to be able to keep running my business the way I am. So now I'm like, I need to shift my mentality into putting myself into uncomfortable situations, coming out on top. So when push comes to shove, I need to, and I feel the same way is for the dogs.
For sure. Yeah,
so that's why I was out. I'm not trying to say like that we're abusive. Right. I'm just saying I'm more understanding of what needs to be done in certain cases.
But like the analogy you used. Okay, so like a dog, somebody steps. You take a protection dog, and the dog was never exposed to something else that could happen. Right. Guy trips over him. The guy steps on his toe, or something like that happens. You don't. Frank Phillips said something really great. He said, the mistake people make is they send the dog in the blind and somebody whacks the dog. Well, that's like having a young boy, a 10-year-old boy, and putting him up against a 22-year-old MMA guy. Right. You condition the athlete. Steve Stoops said that, you condition the boy to become a man. That's what you're doing. You take the puppy and, I see what you do with your puppies. I mean, you're so fastidious about every little thing. And then, like when we talked about tracking, right? Like you want some trash on the track so that when it happens that a piece of newspaper blows across the track, it doesn't destroy your track. The dog goes, oh, I've seen that happen before. And you put him through that stress. You've experienced it, but you've actually helped him more the way you're training him than the way and I'm not criticizing positive only people, but the way somebody does who removes all adversity from life. That's not doing any creature any favors, right? I remember a bird, at some point the mother doesn't teach it to fly, it just kind of flicks it out of the nest, and it's fly or die. Right. And, we're a lot more compassionate than that with our animals when we raise them. But nature's tough, man. I mean, nature's tough. I've seen it in Africa and, with wildlife and everywhere. Life is tough. Yeah.
I see this dude on YouTube, this, peer positive trainer who you were going at it with. He posted something talking about how, it's proven like that that animals anywhere don't use, positive punishment to fix anything, right? And then there was a clip of like this monkey flicking like poop at somebody, and the mom comes, whatever they call it, she comes with like a bush and just like whacks him, and he's like, oh shit, and then he goes away, and then he stops, right? And you're like, that is good. The dog is, the monkey was learning, sure. And she was educating. Yeah. And so, she didn't hurt the monkey. He was still good. Now he knows, don't do it. Yeah. Don't do that. That's not allowed. Yeah. And I feel like we're doing a disservice to dogs when we don't.
Well, because, you get into terms and words are very powerful. So, when you come up with a great term like positive only dog training, and then you call it science-based. Well, science has been wrong a bunch of times, right? Including the flat Earth, right? And some people still believe it's flat, but nonetheless, there's been a lot of mistakes in science. And the beautiful thing about science is it evolves. But science-based dog training is not really science-based dog training because it ignores the 4 quadrants. It ignores 3 out of the 4. It's 75% of science is ignored in science-based dog training. We've proven dogs can learn by positive punishment, right? But we've also proven that they can learn by positive reinforcement. But why do we have to choose? And again, I'm not a big science guy. I don't like the whole quadrants. I think it's very confusing to people. But, B.F. Skinner, first of all, was not a dog trainer. And he's cited by more dog trainers than anybody else. So here's a guy who had no idea on how to train a dog, probably couldn't get a dog through a BH. Right. But yet all these dog trainers are citing this study. And this is a person who is putting, rats in shuttle boxes and electrocuting them and proving this. But now they're taking one side of his argument saying this is doctrine, this is gospel, but the other side isn't. So it's an extremely flawed argument for anybody who with a half a brain.
But I even see it now. Like I'm always like intrigued by like when I get a trainer, a force-free trainer, positive only, whatever, attack me, I always go to their page and I see what they're doing.
Yeah.
And you know what they're doing? They got a dog on a long line in the middle where there's no other distractions, and they're playing with their dog and they're letting, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, well, that's not normal. That's not what my clients are seeing.
Sure.
Yeah. So, you know, so while I understand where you're coming from about you not wanting to correct the dog. Yeah, but we're in completely different situations here. Like my dogs are completely different situations than yours. Now, I'm not saying that with the right dog, with the right trainer, you can't make good training with positive only methods with the right, but there's certain dogs that don't fit that. And there's certain owners that for sure don't fit that.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with them?
Well, you know, the problem is everybody thinks theirs is the only way. Like everything I do and you do starts positive, right? All my training, I've had this saying since day one. I said, everything I do with the dog starts with a treat and a toy. Where it goes from there is totally up to the dog.
Right.
If I tell a dog to stay in the middle of the field and I come back and I give him a cookie and he stays there and I can walk a dog by, well, then he's learned.
Yeah.
Sadly, most dogs who have a predatory drive, because they are predators, right? We've kind of outbred the predator in a lot of dogs. But if we're just, if it's in there, if it has a predatory instinct and a rabbit runs by when I tell him to sit, the desire to chase that rabbit is greater than the desire for the piece of kibble.
Right.
Right. So now my thing is I had a Shar-Pei and a Belgian Malinois and a parrot, and they all lived together. And my parrot would sit on the bed with my Shar-Pei and the Malinois. And people said, how'd you get him to do that? And I said, well, his desire to kill the bird was overridden by his fear of me killing him. Right? So, and now doesn't mean I would ever kill him.
But it sounds ugly.
But it is. Life is ugly.
I know. But I'm saying like somebody would easily flip that and be like, oh, he put fear into the dog. That's why he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
No, he's just teaching the dog how to.
But why is fear bad?
Yeah.
Like the reason I don't drive 100 miles an hour on the freeway.
1,000% is not. You know what I'm saying? But the way the words that they're using are like, you know, are things that trigger people.
But just the word trigger, you know, we need to be able to be triggered.
Right.
You know, we're really growing into a society of wimps in a lot of ways, right? And when the proverbial, you know, what hits the fan, you're going to need some people to clean up the mess.
Right.
And those are not the people who are easily offended, you know, and that's one thing that, like I said, I've got no problem if you don't want to hire me as a dog trainer, or if you don't like my way of dog training, but it works.
Right.
It's much more positive than the guy you're talking about online. Because I've seen these people with harnesses on their dogs and their dog pulling and not getting a clear signal for weeks and weeks of lessons. My dog is going to get a really clear picture really early on, and boundaries and structure is a really humane way to help an animal. And if you don't want to help an animal and you're putting your own ego and your own agenda in there and calling yourself a purely positive person, you're not purely positive. You're very abusive, because you're not giving a clear picture. Dogs function in black and white. I used to say this in my lectures. I said, dogs know black and white. And if I put those two together and I walk in the middle, where am I walking? And everybody says gray. I said, no, there's no gray between black and white. It's a line. You're either walking on the black side or the white side.
Right.
And that's how dogs understand life. That's how every animal who cannot communicate through verbal means understands life. There's punishment and there's pleasure. Right? That's it. If I go to another country, and I've gone to different countries where I didn't speak the language, and I would try to figure out how to communicate, and it was positive and negative. It was yes and no. You know this and you know that.
Right.
And that's how we start teaching dogs. We do this and we give them a cookie, and we do this and we don't give them a cookie. And here's the thing, people don't like it. Okay, well, are you willing to take your beloved dog that you love as much as you love your guapo, I love my Goofy or Silly, are you willing to take that dog and put him in front of an aggressive dog and use your positive only methods?
Right.
Because I've put Goofy on the floor in a park without a leash in the middle of the park, and I've walked an aggressive German Shepherd on him. Now he knows Robert's got this.
Right.
Right. So he's going to stay put. Now, this dog that I'm working, I need to control him because if he hurts my dog, first of all, that's not going to do him any good. And it's not going to do my dog any good. So you need to get those pictures across in a humane black and white manner because you cannot explain it verbally. You know, it's impossible.
Right. That's good. Yeah, no, and I agree with you 1,000%, man.
Yeah.
Roy, you got any questions for Robert?
No,
bro?
man, I'm just enjoying this. I did have a question. So your first experience with your Shar-Pei, would you say that that's where your career as a dog trainer started, or did it start once people from the veterinarian office started calling you for help?
Well, I would say my experience with dogs, you know, really started when I was watching Mike train his Doberman or anything like that. I don't really know where it started. It's like really hard for me, even with my martial arts, to say where did it really start.
The reason I ask is because we have a team of 9 trainers,
More than that, like 11, I think.
11, and I want to say 80% of them are below 25 years old. I started training dogs professionally with Oscar at the age of 33. How old were you when you consider yourself a trainer?
A lot older than
Professional.
A professional trainer.
You know, I have an issue with the word professional. You know, like I'm a dog trainer. Yeah. You know, I think whenever you put professional before a word, it shows that there's a problem. Like professional photographer,
Right.
Yeah.
Like there's no professional doctors. There's no
I see what
professional
you're saying.
lawyers. You know what I mean? When you have to say I'm a professional dog trainer, what makes you?
I guess I just I take it like skateboarding. Like you become a pro when you
get paid.
get paid.
Right.
Right. So that's I think it's like, when did you first? I don't know when I.
Yeah,
first,
Oscar.
I don't know when I first started getting paid as a dog trainer. Honestly,
But
reason I ask is-
but look at somebody who does amazing like competition stuff. They're professional dog trainers, but they're not getting paid.
got it.
Right.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think just because you get paid, you're a professional. I think you're just a paid dog trainer. You can say I'm a paid dog trainer.
Right.
I just consider myself, I mean, I'm still evolving. Every single dog I put hands on for the first time, I start as a student of that dog.
That's it.
I want to study that dog. I want to know what are his needs, what are his challenges, and how can I most humanely and effectively help him get from point A to point B in the quickest amount of time. Because a dog only lives for 12 years, right? So that's not fair for me to waste 2 years of that dog's life and thousands of dollars of a person's money to teach them something that I can teach them relatively quickly.
Right. Now, do you also look at the owner and how they manage the dog and how you know what I'm saying? Like, do you consider that when it comes to the training?
Yeah, it's a huge piece. The dynamics, everything in life, right? You and your wife, me and my wife, you know, me and my dog, you and your dog. There's a dynamic, our friendship, right? We have an immense respect for each other. And it's based on how we interact with each other. You know, if you don't have respect, you don't have something built up, you interact differently. But if that owner doesn't have a way of communicating or a way of, your dog must respect you.
Right.
Right. And people always say, well, I want my dog to love me. I said, then make him respect you first. Because children, you want them to love you first, then they will respect you. Dogs will never, ever go in that direction. They will respect you and they will love you, because here's the equation. When I used to be a bodyguard, people kind of, you know, would want me to go hang out with them because they felt safe, right? So we could go to really bad neighborhoods, and I knew kind of what to watch for, or I would know what to look out for. And if something happened, I would know what to do. Your dog doesn't know that much about you. He either knows he's safe with you or he's not safe with you. Most dogs, 90+% of dogs that have aggression issues are doing it because they're insecure.
Right.
They're trying to protect you and themselves. If your dog knows that's the toughest mother I know, he's not going to be tough. Why? Why would he be tough? And I think that's a problem in the protection sports when you start by being too strong on the dog, because then you squash the dog's. How many times do you see that, right? People put so much pressure on a dog when the dog is young that the dog grows up to be like, and I made the mistake with my dog, right? I didn't know good trainers like you when I started with Goofy. We all know what happened. We talked about it. I'm not going to say it publicly, but they put too much pressure on the dog, and I put pressure on the dog. And so if Goofy went into the blind to do a bark and hold, and I walked by, he was like, whoa, you know, and you don't want that.
Right.
The dog must be confident, right? And that's what I watch in your dogs. Your dogs are confident. That's what I watch in dogs, of people that I really admire in the sports. Their dogs are confident, but you got to bring that in a certain way.
1,000%. Yeah. You got to be tactical or, plan out how you're going to do it in a way that is going to work for that dog.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll open up, other little things you could cause other little issues doing it the wrong way. You got to go back and fix those things and, work through all that stuff. Yeah, that's why, man, that's why I love like protection work and everything. Because especially competition, because it gives you a criteria what you got to train for. And then you run into these, obstacles. You got to get through it or whatever. But
it's a minefield.
Yeah. All right. So we do have some questions for you. All right. From our people out there, our listeners. Let me get one good one for you. One that I think it's good. This one, yeah. Can you explain the difference? And I have no clue what they're talking about. So maybe you do because you've talked about it. Maybe they've listened to you. Okay. Can you explain the difference between body and brain reactivity or aggressiveness?
So I think what they're referring to is dogs that are reactive versus dogs that are aggressive.
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of the way I read it.
Okay.
Sometimes people have, like people from other countries, so they don't say it right. But the big...
Oh, I see what you're saying now.
I
got it.
Right? Body aggressiveness. And so a dog that's reactive, all dogs are reactive in a way. Right? We're all reactive.
They're going to react a certain way, whether it be a positive reaction or a negative.
Right.
Yeah.
But when we say, and this is a big trigger word in rescue, like they'll say, oh, he's not dog aggressive, he's dog reactive. Well, based on his reaction, he might become aggressive. Right. And then we have to deal with defensive or offensive aggression. Right. A dog that's defensively aggressive is just trying to get away, but is a lot more dangerous because if he's cornered, he's going to kill than a dog who's dominant or offensively aggressive. So it really goes into how we would approach that dog in training. And, again, a dog that's reactive, we're going to assume for the sake of the conversation that the dog is more than likely more fear-based aggressive, is a little insecure. We build immense amount of confidence in the dog because crushing a dog that's already negative and it's already defensive, you can't
either that or like it could be frustration, right? Frustration, and that's getting him to react a certain way, barking and doing all that.
Right, tight leashes and stuff like that.
Aggressiveness, I mean, I feel like the dogs that I have seen that are aggressive it's a very different look. One that I recall, and I don't know, was this bull terrier, and she was very quiet, but very intense going forward, like looking at the dog in a way like she really wanted to kill this dog. What other ways can you have you seen dogs be aggressive that you're like, oh yeah, that's an aggressive dog?
Well, I always say still water runs deep.
Can you explain that?
Still water runs deep. So in other words, like if you look at like waves and stuff, waves happen because it's running up against something. Like if you go in the ocean and it's really still, it's probably really deep. So when I see an animal, like a person, like a guy who comes up to me and is like yelling in my face and swearing at me, I really don't worry much about that. But if somebody's real quiet and they're just looking at you with that, they're not blinking, they're staring at you, that worries me a little bit more. So a dog that I can't read, a dog that's real still and real quiet and really like, whale-eyed, like looking at you, that would worry me a little bit more than a dog that's barking like crazy or lunging or growling or whatever.
I like it. All right, this is a good one. Okay. And I could almost answer this one for you. What would you suggest doing to help solve some of the problems in LA shelter system? You got to buy his program. I mean, that's it. No, so what do you think?
Well, the problem one is pet overpopulation, right? Backyard breeders and all that stuff. We don't really have enough people who are really training their dogs. Whether it's online training, in-person training, whatever, even if you go to Petco with your dog, you're doing something with your dog. Get involved, make being, and that's what's cool when I hear you guys have young trainers. That's why I like when I hear things about young people in the sports, because it gets them active. We need to build this compassion, just like we need to build bridges between cultures like black, white, gay, straight, all these other things. We need to build bridges between dogs and people. Like, how do we get a dog in a home. Like recidivism is one of the number one things affecting dogs going back. And like they'll get adopted. Pandemic, right? All the shelters are empty.
Right.
Post-pandemic, all the shelters are full. Right? Because people have this kind of disposable mentality about dogs.
Right.
Like to me, I would rather die than give up my dog. I would live in my car rather than give up my dog. I've never given up a dog. And I took a Shar-Pei out of the shelter one time that was horribly aggressive. It attacked my other Shar-Pei and wanted to kill it. Like it was nobody could take this dog. It bit. My one friend was going to take it, and he bit her. It bit everybody. They couldn't feed the dog. And they called me that one day. It was just February 13th, day before Valentine's Day. Like, I forgot what year it was. And they said, can you take this dog? And I said, yeah. And I took him, and I never gave him up. And he died. He died in my arms. 4 months later, he had some kind of a brain issue. But we just need to, one, become more responsible dog owners. They need to crack down on backyard breeders. You know, I mean, this is every time somebody says, "Oh, you got a purebred dog. What about all those rescue dogs?" Well, I never put a dog in the shelter,
right.
And I've rescued dogs and I bought dogs, and I got no problem with anyone who does either. But if you're going, supporting a puppy mill or some backyard breeder, then I got a problem with it. But the shelters need to do their job in instilling more programs that train dogs, because a trained dog is a much easier dog to get adopted out.
1,000%.
Than a wild dog in the kennel.
No, I think that what you were doing, with the shelter dogs, I think that's amazing. And if anybody out there wants to do something like that, and you need to, if you want to learn how to train, and you're gonna put some time into shelters like that, and you're gonna bring out a shelter dog that you need help with, I would be more than happy to help you out. So I'm just putting that out there, because I think that I have been thinking about, like, man, what are some ways that I could, like, kind of give back or whatever. And I think that's an amazing way. So if trainers out there listening, if you can get out there and help your local dogs that nobody is seeing, especially us that we're into like social media and everything, like that's a good opportunity.
Yeah, there's
to get
a lot of
dogs seen.
The problems with shelters is they're really limited. Like you're no shelter is going to let you bring an e-collar and a prong collar in. I mean, you're very limited. So shelters need to open their minds about that, because what happens is the purely positive crowd. And again, I'm not here to slam on that, right? There's a ton of, like, Susan Garrett's a great trainer. My wife is 90% positive, great trainer. This Melissa Enning is a friend of hers, does agility, amazing trainer. But they know their limits, right? They're not going to take a really aggressive dog out of the shelter. So we need to kind of bridge that gap. And here, you can take these dogs, we'll take these dogs, let's work together.
Right.
Plenty of dogs that need help.
Yeah. All right. We got you could pick one from these two, and then it'll be our last one, because I know your time is valuable.
Let's do both of them. If
all right,
cool. Enough to write it, let's do it.
All right. Tips to giving a dog with bite history a fair life.
Structure. Everything comes with structure. Like, with dogs that have that kind of issues, I think the biggest mistake people make with dogs that have bite history is they right away want to get the dog out in an environment, and then they want people giving the dog treats. Right? There's no bigger mistake than a dog that has an issue with people and then people getting in that dog's face. Right? So as a trainer, my thing is to decompress the dog. Like, everybody around you doesn't even pay attention to you.
I love that.
They don't put any pressure on you. And the only person who's going to give you cookies is me.
Right.
Right. And then after weeks of this, I have people dropping treats. So there's no pressure. I think dogs with bite history don't do well with pressure they can't understand, right? The pressure of me not allowing them to interact and pressure of me telling somebody else don't go near the dog makes it fair to the dog. Right. Then I can explain to the dog, you have no reason to bite. But if somebody's getting right in his face, I can't correct the dog because I haven't set up a fair structure for the dog.
So you basically what you're saying is, first you got to change the dog's mindset about people. Like, meaning there's no reason for you to interact with this person, and that is our job as owners, letting the other person know, like, yo, stay away from my dog, right? And once the dog is comfortable and he knows the situation, now you could not counter condition, but I mean you could let him know, hey, people are good, because every time somebody walks by, they're going to drop something for you, and it's going to become a positive association. Now, even then, I still wouldn't allow people to get so close, but at least you're working towards getting that dog a little more comfortable with people.
But it's the same thing people do with reactive dogs, right? They right away want to take it. And I had a client who had one that says, can we just put him on the e-collar and put him in front of the fence at the dog park? And I'm like, well, that's the worst thing to do.
Yeah.
Like for me, aggressive dog, first of all, I don't think in socializing a dog, it needs to be friends with other dogs. It must accept other dogs, right? Like you don't have to like every person you see in the street. That person could just have a face that you just want to punch. But not punching them, right, is what really makes you a better person. So if I teach my dog, okay, there's a dog there, you're with me. There's a dog there, you're with me. We'll teach my dog, like Goofy is super social, right? He has no problems. But I never let him meet all these dogs when he was young. He was always coming back to me. So he always thought, well, no dog's going to bother me. And he wouldn't run up to another dog. When you try to over-socialize dogs, they start running up to other dogs, and then they're going to run up to one bad dog, and then they're going to get in a fight.
That's good advice. What is the best approach to meeting a shelter dog?
Neutrality. Like let the dog check you out. I mean, I always, because I could correct a dog, I could protect myself if something were to happen. I would always, when I went to the kennel, and this is a different story, if the person is actually talking about adopting a dog or working at a shelter, it's a big difference. If you're going to actually be taking dogs out of a kennel, you need to know that technique, how to get dogs out of a kennel. And there's a special technique for it. But to me, it always starts with dropping a couple of cookies in the kennel, seeing the dog, and the dog going, okay, this guy's fair, and then noosing him. Now, when somebody is going to adopt a shelter dog, and this is a huge piece, the biggest mistake, and I've seen, never on my watch, but I've seen people bring their kids in there, and the first thing they do, whenever anybody meets a dog, they start petting the dog. It's on a tight leash, overstimulating, trying to kiss it. Like nobody in the world has ever been bitten on the face by a dog that didn't put their face close, unless it's a Great Dane, right? Unless it's a big dog. Generally, you put people. The number one place people are bit by rattlesnakes is in the face, because they pick the rattlesnake up or they get close to it. It's just really stupid. Right? So when people do, or on the hands from trying to pick them up, and people get bit on the hands and they get bit on the face by dogs. So just let, especially a shelter dog, it needs to decompress. Like if you first bring the dog home, just put it in a crate, let it feed it, hand feed it. Just be chill. Just let it decompress.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes us feel good petting the dog.
Yeah.
But like how you see my puppy right now, I give him no attention when I'm talking to somebody. I try to, except for I'm not even going to mention it. Yesterday, I'll tell you off camera. Okay. But anyways, I want him to chill out, and anyways.
He's a great dog.
Yeah, he's a good dog. But I want to make sure that, our interactions are when, like, he understands that when I start talking to somebody, he just lays down. Yeah. And he's doing it. And I think naturally, the breeder said that he was like that. He kind of like laid back. And then, so I'm like, yo, that's what I want. Yeah. So anyways, Ro, you got anything else for Robert?
No.
Hey, man, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming out here. And why don't we tell everybody I'm sure everybody already knows about Robert, but in case you have not heard, where can they find all your stuff? And
just my site. I mean, everything leads off my site, robertcabral.com. They can find my YouTube, my course, my lessons, my training lessons, and all my social media stuff.
Awesome. Hey, man, we really appreciate you. First off, what you're doing for the community. I think, for the dog training culture is big. And a lot of people look up to you. I look up to you.
Oh, thank you.
And so, man, you got anything else to add?
No. Just a quick funny story. When I first met Robert, I didn't know he was a dog trainer. I was out in Irwindale, and I was like, "Oh, hey, my name's Roel. My name's Robert. Oh, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a dog trainer." And I looked him up later, and I was like, "Oh, okay, he's not just a dog trainer."
Yeah, yesterday we're there with the team, right? And I'm like, yeah, we got Robert coming out, and he's like, one of them was like, Robert Cabral's gonna be out there? Yeah, bro. Can I go over there and hang out? I'm like, yeah, bro, come meet him. So he might be here in a little bit.
All right, cool.
But anyways, if you guys, we have recently changed our channel. What is it now?
Created a new channel separate from Oscar Mora Canines. So
so what was happening was I was having like other people not being able to find my stuff, and so we wanted to create something a little bit more for like Elevated Canine Media, which is going to be different, what is it, vlog vlogs.
Yeah, vlogs, training days,
and then podcast and all that. So we started a channel just for that. So make sure you guys check out.
Right now it's Elevated Canine Podcast. We're gonna change it to Elevated Canine Media.
Yep.
So we'll put some links on Oscar's page, and then through Instagram you'll slowly start seeing things transition.
Yep. And today's episode was brought to you by Underdog, which Robert has a vest.
The best vest.
Yeah, and you guys could go pick it up at Underdog, UNDR.
UNDRDOG. It's on your shirt.
.US. Go check it out, guys. And then, see you guys on the next one.
Awesome.
Let's get it. This that go and get it. With no hesitation. This that never quit.